Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Today is PCOS Wednesday and we're going live. My name is Dr. Siobhan Joseph and I am the Medical Director at Azalea Health Services located in Woodbrook, Port of Spain. And tonight it's sort of a part two, right, from last week's discussion about fibroids. And tonight we're going to talk about how to live and eat a certain way so you can reduce your fibroid risk. So welcome in, everyone, and we'll get started, right? And thanks for all the feedback that I've been getting in the office. That's important to know that this is working out for you guys as well too. So tonight we're going to do part two, and tonight we're going to talk about fibroids. I get asked a lot about diet and what's good, what's not good, and the myths that are out there on the internet as well. So having a fibroid-friendly diet basically involves avoiding certain foods and beverages and increasing your intake of others as well too. And this can help slow the growth. We can't prevent them, and there's no real cure for them, we just manage them. But this approach to nutrition and diet may slow the growth of fibroids you have already and also reduce your risk of developing more, because over the lifetime of a woman while having periods, everyone is susceptible. So uterine fibroids are non-cancerous, right? These are benign, non-cancerous growths that develop either inside the walls of your womb, inside the cavity, or even outside of your womb as well too. And it's the normal muscle cells in your uterus that start to grow abnormally and form these benign tumors of various sizes. Now, obesity and weight gain has been linked to the development of fibroids as well too, right? We are going to discuss things based on what studies are finding. So recent studies show that obese women are more likely to develop fibroids, and we'll go into that a little bit more, compared to women who tend to balance and maintain a healthy weight. Eating too much red meat, such as beef and ham, will be discussed tonight as well too, and because those have been linked to uterine fibroids. Hi, good night. I'm getting waves. Thank you. Hi, Balki. So, of course, with my slides, I think this is an important one to just demonstrate that this has been accepted. Women of African ethnicity are 2 to 3 times more likely than other ethnicities to develop fibroids. And, no matter what ethnicity you are, if you are of mixed race, if you do have some form of African ethnicity, then yes, there is going to be this increased risk in women. Genetics have been confirmed as a risk factor for fibroids as well too. They are inherited, right? So this is important for you, for your daughters, family members, and so forth. If there are fibroids within the family, that's an important history to take stock of with your gynecologist as well too. Right? Hi, good evening or good night, Miss Joan Marshall. Welcome. So, reproductive age women get fibroids, right? Who gets it? Women get them more as they get older. We tend not to see them in puberty. And also, it rarely ever, actually, I hardly find it in teenagers. Before puberty, we don't see them at all. Very few teenagers get fibroids. It happens with age. And then they shrink after menopause. Early onset of puberty is an increased risk as well too. So girls who start their periods younger than age 10, this is important, all the mummies in the room, girls who start their periods younger than age 10 have increased risk of fibroids. And if you yourself do have fibroids and you think back, maybe I was 9 when I had my first period, or 8 is an age that we're seeing as well too. And puberty is generally found to be to occur earlier in Black women rather than other ethnicities. So there must be a link as well there too. Right? Good evening, Moline. Welcome. So Megan, you're saying you started at 10 exactly. I'm very public. I started my period at 9. My mom is in the room. My mother had fibroids. She's in the room as well too. So definitely the genetic risk is there. The African ethnicity, early age of onset of puberty is important to take stock as well too. Things that reduce the risk in the course of a woman's lifetime: women who've had more than 2 children tend not to regrow or tend not to have additional fibroid issues once they've conceived and delivered at least 1 to 2 children. So pregnancy, and we know breastfeeding reduces the risk as well too. And this has to do more with the estrogen levels sort of during that postpartum phase especially. There are lower estrogen levels, and that would be something to deter fibroid growths. Now, birth control pills are a risk factor, are they not? It's been up for debate, but they do not appear to cause fibroids to grow, right? That being, if I'm on the pill and someone else is not on the pill, we will still experience fibroid growth, but on the pill, I may have fibroid symptoms that are improved because I'm on the pill. So it's not that the pill tends to cause a fibroid growth. This is what they found in studies. Being on the pill tends to ameliorate the symptoms from the fibroids, which a lot of these symptoms can be really, just destructive to the daily routine for most women. So being on the pill doesn't shrink or stop fibroids. They can still continue to grow, unfortunately. One study showed there was a higher risk of fibroids in young girls who started the pill early, age 13 to 16, that age range, which sometimes the gynecologist might make that decision to start a young adolescent on the pill because their periods are not manageable. So now the push, the discussion has to be whether it's safe to start a 13-year-old on the pill, because this has been shown to increase their fibroid risk later on. The Depo-Provera injection, which is a contraceptive that's injected that doesn't contain any estrogen, seems to have some protective effect against fibroids, but of course you're signing up for a laundry list of side effects, right, when you're on these medications. After childbirth, as I just said, in the postpartum period, fibroids do tend to decrease in size, and then the hormonal IUD is showing the most promise compared to the pill and the shot in terms of decreasing fibroid size, and that would be your Mirena, which is the 5-year hormonal IUD as a discussion. But all of these factors they speak about, right, adolescence and when it shrinks in menopause, all of these lead to the acceptance that fibroids are affected by your estrogen levels. So tonight's live really has to do with, if you want to help your estrogen levels naturally and reduce your fibroid risk, what foods should you really focus on, right? And the discussion about foods is consistent. Every live, I think I touch on things, and there's quite a bit of overlap over which foods would manage and balance hormones. We're looking at lean meats as number one when we're talking about fibroid risk and reducing additional growth of fibroids that you may have. Lean meats are also full of protein, right? We talk about the protein, and women tend to have a lack of protein intake, but our bodies need more protein, especially as we're aging. And then other minerals and so forth would be in our lean meats, including iron, if you're having fibroids with heavy periods and anemia. Lean meat would basically pertain to skinless chicken and fish. And this would not be fried. Try to avoid frying these as much as possible. Now, the next on the list after lean meats is the discussion about good old eggs, right? And the debate continues where eggs are concerned. With the yolk, without the yolk, egg whites, if I'm trying to lose weight, if avoiding the yolks and so forth. So it's a discussion that's sort of, you have to take from it what works for you, where the egg discussion is concerned. But I'm just pointing out the facts about eggs tonight. So roughly 80 calories, right, is what one egg contains, and about 7 grams of protein in one egg. It's pretty packed in there for one egg. And it's a rich, high quality form of protein. And it's not I guess it can't be ignored that eggs are a superfood in terms of the health benefits. They are naturally rich in pretty much most of the vitamins from A through Z for zinc. They have vitamin B2, B12, vitamin D, which is something we rarely find in food sources. Megan is commenting that the eggs make her nauseous. So again, this is tailored to your specific taste. I'm just pointing out the facts about eggs as well too. So if they make you nauseous, definitely stay away from them. But vitamin D is something that we tend not to make, and I'm going to touch on that more in depth, especially for women of darker complexion. But eggs do contain vitamin D. Selenium and iodine as well too are minerals that are in eggs that we need. Vitamin A is something that we're focusing on more where fibroids are concerned. So if you can't get it from the eggs, you can get it from other sources. And it's just a list of elements and nutrients that are contained in eggs. But for women with fibroids, they are thought to be a good food choice because of the vitamin D, as I was talking about. More and more research is demonstrating that a lack of the sunshine vitamin, which is vitamin D, can increase your chances of developing uterine fibroids. Indeed, making sure that you have sufficient vitamin D levels can reduce your risk of uterine fibroids. That's been established, and they calculated that risk is reduced by as much as 32%. I'm not sure what else I'm going to talk about tonight that would reduce the risk to that level, but vitamin D does reduce the risk of fibroids in women up to 32%. So studies say that eggs are a good source of that. They say that it's safe to eat the yolks, right? So again, there's a lot of debates where eggs are concerned, but the yolk is considered to be the nutrient-bearing part of this food, and I just listed all the ingredients that would be in there. However, they are naturally high in cholesterol, but the cholesterol is measured and found, I think it's over 300 milligrams of cholesterol in one egg, but the cholesterol in eggs doesn't actually raise the cholesterol levels in your bloodstream the way other foods do. So if you're suffering or dealing with high cholesterol, the eggs are not necessarily the first to go. It's the other high foods high in trans fats and saturated fats that would really be pushing your cholesterol levels as well too. And still on the topic of the eggs and even dairy, researchers in the UK, they followed more than 22,000, that's a pretty decent study, women who weren't menopausal, and they found that when they had a higher intake of preformed vitamin A, which means that the vitamin A is found in the food naturally. And again, if you can't do the eggs, you also get vitamin A in fruits. So they found that a woman that had higher intake of fruit, whole milk and eggs did have a lower risk of developing uterine fibroids. This was in the UK. And then the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, right? So I'm just pulling facts for you guys. They looked at the link between eating fruits with the natural source of vitamin A and fibroids, and they found a decreased risk. So basically, more than the eggs, we're looking at what the benefit from them would be, which is vitamin A. Again, you get it in eggs, some meats. Milks are fortified with vitamin A as well, too, milk, cheese, cream, and so forth. Liver, I talked about eating liver, the anemia special, liver, kidney, and then fish like cod. And of course, fish oil may decrease fibroid risk. Now, let's put a pin right there with the fish, because I'm going to come into some precautions where fish is concerned as well too with the fibroid diet. Now, one study that I found did specify that soy specifically does not reduce fibroid risk. So when we're looking at the reduction with the dairy and the eggs and so forth, we're looking at the vitamin A component of those and of course the vitamin D. But soy did not show any reduced fibroid risk. There was a study that looked at Black women with fibroids and soy intake. And then soy also, on a side note, tended to cause breast symptoms and breast changes in some women. So just be cognizant of that. So there was no impact or decrease in fibroids by intake of soy. It does remain a safe substitute for dairy in women or people who are lactose intolerant as well too. Right? Now, vitamin D deficiency, I just touched on A, and D is important as well too, right? So all this melanin we're working with. Vitamin D deficiency happens more in a woman with darker skin, and it's linked to increased fibroid risk. One way to make sure you're getting sufficient vitamin D is really to get plenty sunshine. Your body produces vitamin D when your skin is exposed to sunlight. Scientists have accepted that vitamin D, what it does, the fibroid cells, as I said, it's benign tumors that grow in the wall of the uterus. The vitamin D actually blocks that process, and it resists the cells, it helps the cells resist forming that firmer fibrous tissue to form fibroids. So foods that are high in vitamin D, if you can't get enough sunshine, which is estimated to be about 20 minutes of direct sunshine. I did the live on vitamin D, and I'll probably rehash some of that information. There's information that talks about, you think you're sitting behind a car glass or in an office getting direct sun, and it's not. It's direct UV light to the skin. And if not, you have cod liver oil, dairy products, as I mentioned before, egg yolks, as I mentioned before. Some breakfast cereals are fortified with vitamin D. Just please read your labels and be careful with the amount of sugar content in these breakfast cereals. But generally, oily fish would have vitamin D in them naturally. D3 and D2 are two different formats of vitamin D that you can take as supplements as well too. And tofu, right? But if you're truly concerned about having a vitamin D deficiency, it's a simple blood test that could be done just to check your vitamin D levels to see if you need to have a prescribed amount as well too, right? So that's the vitamin D bit of it, which proved to be quite important where fibroid risk is concerned. Now we're moving on to the cruciferous veggies. So I started on lean meats, I touched on eggs and vitamin A, vitamin D, and now these cruciferous family of veggies, which includes kale, cabbage, broccoli, right? So in recent years, kale kind of literally sprouted up as a superfood as well, just as eggs are considered a superfood. But it is cruciferous vegetable, which means that this and other ones they're high in something called indole 3-carbinol, which is a compound within these veggies that actually has been found to prevent the estrogen factor in the formation of these tumor producing fibroids. So if you do veggies that are high in fiber, you'd get this compound as well too. So other ones include arugula, bok choy or pat choy, any other choice, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, right? Your greens in general, watercress, right? Which is available quite affordably locally as well too. And wasabi is on that list, right? So there go our sushi lovers. But these veggies help with the liver. And as we spoke about the liver a few weeks ago, the liver is in charge of detoxifying your blood. It's cleaning our bloodstream, and it's also responsible for how we deal with excess estrogen in our body and other hormones. So these veggies, these cruciferous veggies, they are on the list, and you can have them raw or cooked and just continue to incorporate them more often if you have fibroid risk, right? Now, the next on the list is a very simple ingredient that's in most households, which is coconut oil, all right? One of my faves. So coconut oil in some studies does show that even though it's not a typical cooking oil, you may not usually use it for cooking, it is full of many beneficial fats. And where fibroids are concerned and estrogen excess, and again, we're talking about foods to help you manage your estrogen, coconut oil, the fat in there, seems to provide a healthier foundation for the building block of hormones when we produce them. So you can use it in cooking. One study I looked at, they talked about the woman took a tablespoon of coconut oil daily. I'm not advising that. I don't know how that would taste, but definitely that was on the list of fibroid risk reduction, right? And again, green veggies and fruit always on the table, and especially citrus, where citrus is concerned. Now, when I talk about period cramps and reducing cramps, lemon water remains to be something that for that PMS phase that helps. And here they're saying that there is a 0.5 times decreased risk of fibroids and fibroid growth if you incorporate citrus. And again, this is barring any allergies and any dislikes for these items. Carrots made the list, rounding up the list of things that you should do. Carrots are high in beta carotene, which brings us right back to vitamin A as well too. So again, if you can't do the eggs, you can do carrots. And carrots again seem to improve how our adrenal glands work, where we sort of create a lot of our hormones as well too. And then if you are looking at reducing sugar and reducing sugar in your daily nutrition with reducing your fibroid risk, apples, there was a study about the apples that actually proved that they have some the antioxidant qualities. So the National Institutes of Health in the US, they actually said the high consumption of apples can be a protective factor for women with uterine fibroids. Who knew? Right? Who knew? Last on the list of things that would improve or reduce risk, and improve the situation with fibroids is smoking. But just hear me out on the smoking. Early studies showed that smoking did decrease the risk of having fibroids. I had to put that there. I don't know if a smoker stopping smoking would get fibroids, or fibroids would sort of grow and they were being suppressed while this individual smoked. I'm not endorsing smoking, but they did show in some studies there was a reduced right? But then subsequent, these are early studies, subsequent studies obviously say that smoking has multiple serious health risks that doesn't make sense to use it as an option to reduce fibroid growth, right? Now, the list of the naughty things, the things that we want to avoid, some of you guys recognize this guy, right? Ham, specifically salted ham, and beef and other red meats. These tend to have almost a 2-time increased risk of Reese is asking what did they smoke. It was tobacco smoking, cigarette smoking that study was based on. But I'm not endorsing it, just keep that in mind. So beef and red meats and salted ham, right? From a 1.5 up to 2-time increased risk of fibroids were found in studies. So non-organic, right? So organic is a word that always is going to come into play when we talk about fibroid diets and balancing hormones, because non-organic animal products are not safe, and you kind of have to really delve in. You kind of have to really delve in to maybe investigating the source of our meats more, and maybe we have to be more responsible with our nutrition and that to know the source. So Miss Marshall is asking, this includes not eating goat. Well, you know, there should be a goat study, especially since 80% of women in the Caribbean have fibroids. So maybe it's all the goat that we're eating. Could be possibly, goat is considered red meat, I believe. So it's on the list. But if it's organic, maybe it should be okay. And again, the way that the meat is prepared is the other factor as well too. But non-organic is not good, including beef, cheese, for example. Sometimes these products are treated with growth hormones, right? This is not anything I'm telling you that's new. And these growth hormones, as you ingest them, can do a number on your own hormones. And this is by mimicking or pretending to be estrogen, and leads to an estrogen hormone imbalance that provokes the growth of fibroids. Right? Next on the list of things to avoid, so this is the list of things to avoid, would be polluted seafood. Polluted seafoods can increase the risk of fibroids. So if you're unsure of the source of your seafood, I just talked about lean meats on the list of things you can do. This is the do not do list. Polluted seafood, and again, we probably need to do better, I know I do, in figuring out the source of our food products. If you're concerned about being exposed to polluted seafood, then using omega-3 supplements are just as well and safe for use as well too. So Ms. Marshall says, can't give up the curry goat right now. I didn't say give it up, but most of these things you just want to do in moderation and understand your risk. If you're battling fibroid symptoms, then maybe the goat needs to sort of fall back a bit, right? Will you providing the foods that reduce? Yes, I already have the slides ready. This is from Maxine. Hi, thanks for the question, and I will post what I'm going to post it for sure after the live, right? So polluted seafood, talked about that. If you're unsure, we want to do omega-3 supplements. Now, the next one is kind of personal for me. Caffeine, right? So I'm a coffee lover, and high consumption of caffeine may increase fibroid risk in women under age 35. And they talk about more than 2 cups per day. They talk about the caffeine and even alcohol was lumped into one study that they did, and they saw that in women under 35 there was an increased risk, I believe 1.5 times increased risk of getting fibroid issues and complications. Also, caffeine and alcohol are both linked to lower levels of iron in our blood and iron absorption into our bloodstream. So if you have heavy bleeding from fibroids, you have low iron absorption, then you want to stay away from caffeine and alcohol as well too. The other thing is, a glass of wine at night, a cup or 2 of coffee throughout the day. It might seem like it's not a big deal, but it does add up. And for women who actually are dealing with fibroid symptoms, reducing these can, have some positive impact on reducing the risk. Alcohol and caffeine impacts hormone balance by putting a stress on your liver. And I spoke about the liver because it's such an important organ, specifically important for our estrogen balance and our estrogen metabolism, the way that we use it. And having that imbalance will then trigger and fuel fibroid growth as well too, right? So yeah, caffeine. Meg is commenting again. I don't drink it. Yes, exactly. That's how I feel. Like my coffee, right? So next on the list of don't do is sugar. There was a small risk in one study of increased fibroid size with refined sugar, right? So refined sugar, which is found in everything from pastries to barbecue sauce and ketchup. You don't want to completely get rid of it, but you may want to avoid it and using it daily if you have fibroids or you're trying to avoid developing fibroids or you have fibroid risk. Now, it's very high on what we call the glycemic index. So if we were to measure the amount of sugar as in a carrot versus white sugar and so forth, it's very high because it's refined sugar. And this impacts your bloodstream, your blood sugar. This also increases weight gain and insulin resistance and contributes to hormonal imbalance, and then fibroid growth can be triggered as well too. There was a study from Reuters where it showed that women with high glycemic levels on a daily basis had a greater fibroid risk. So basically, if you're craving something sweet, go for that fruit, preferably organic fruit. I spoke about apples before as well too. But in terms of the refined sugar, maybe this is why I chose this very cute kids cake. Maybe let's reserve the cake for special events. If you have fibroids or you're trying to reduce your fibroid risk, maybe reserve these sweets for moments, because I've lost count how many times I've had women who just eat cake more routinely than they should throughout the course of the week. And if you are someone dealing with fibroids, then maybe reconsider that. In general, white foods, white bread, white rice, white sheet cake, the ones you buy in a grocery store, you understand what I'm getting at. So foods like these basically have not much nutrients left in them because they've been so processed. Most of it is starch, and then of course the sugar. So we have white bleach flour in here, which is a very easy way to spike your blood sugar levels and so forth, and just throw your hormonal balance off. So there are a lot of food options available. Having cake on a very regular basis if you have fibroids is not suggested. Again, let's save it for the special occasions like a kid's birthday, right? Next on the list, you guys are going to keep hating me tonight, is beer. All right, so alcohol and consumption I spoke about already, but especially beer, right? Exactly, roti is on the list. That's unless you can find a whole grain roti and not whole wheat, which is very different to whole grain, right? And again, everything in moderation. This is just decreasing the amounts of these items, especially if you have an issue with fibroids. So alcohol consumption, especially beer. This has been confirmed in studies. Beer has an increased risk of developing fibroids, right? Women who struggle with uterine fibroids should reduce the intake of not just the caffeine and the alcohol, but particularly beer. You can have other forms of alcohol. Again, just be mindful of the sugar intake and the amount of alcohol for a lot of other health reasons. But beer is on the list of a no-no for women with fibroids. The Black Women's Health Study, which I found, and I have to dive a little more into that. I found this study. It's like this massive study based on African American women. A lot of different items were looked at, but one of the focus was on fibroids, and they found an association existed between drinking alcohol, particularly beer, and the development and growth of fibroids. Right? Remember that it's again in moderation, and if you're suffering, we're getting some comments there about the roti. And Meg doesn't like beer. Great. And in terms of the roti, when we had our resident personal trainer on here a few weeks back, Carver, he broke it down that one roti is about 1,300 calories. Okay. So between weight and body fat percentage management and now fibroids, let's kind of understand how much roti we want to get and do these things once in a while, less than more often, right? Now, remember that many things affect your estrogen, not just food and not just these beverages. So the other thing that's important to understand, if you have fibroids or your family has fibroids or your child has puberty prior to age 10 and there's risk of fibroids, that besides the foods to avoid and the foods that are good, which I'll post that list as well, we want to talk about things like pesticides, right? The EPA in the US, they've been in the background really pleading and not doing too well with trying to get the FDA to focus on the fact that 80% of women of one ethnicity are suffering from these uterine fibroids, which have a direct link that they've established to pesticides in our foods. This is where organic comes in. And organic is expensive. Organic is never really always available depending on where you live. So, we should be doing more, and maybe just understanding this and having this constant conversation might produce some change eventually. Maybe not for our generation, but the next generation of women to come, understanding the role of these pesticides. So they have developed a term what's called endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? If you look that up, they're called EDCs. There's this long list of items that qualify. And these contribute to problems with reproductive health. This may contribute to issues with fertility that's going to come out down the line as well too. In the UK, the European Union, they looked at hundreds of thousands of women, and they found that it was costing them $1.5 billion per year in healthcare issues, lost earning potential. This was studied by published by the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, where these endocrine disrupting chemicals that we ingest and they sort of mimic our own hormones are causing a lot of problems. So organic, right? Now, the Science Daily, they also had a study that showed research linking the development of fibroids and endometriosis to chemicals found in pesticides, chemicals found in cosmetics, toys, and even our food containers. And these pesticides have byproducts that raise and increase the risk of developing uterine fibroids. There was a study where they were able to produce or create fibroid growth in female rats in the lab using these endocrine disrupting chemicals or EDCs, right? So another version of this is something called phthalates, PHTHALATES, which is a very common compound used worldwide to make plastics more durable. And it's used in hundreds of different versions of plastic in our household. This is another one that has been found to increase risk of endometriosis and uterine fibroids by these plastics sort of mimicking our own estrogen and causing havoc in our system, which leads to the understanding as to why our grandmothers and great-grandmothers didn't have these hormonal imbalances as well too. These plastics that we're being exposed to. Phthalates are used to make plastics stronger. Vinyl flooring, lubricating oils, personal care products. So again, maybe get a little more plugged into the products that you're purchasing. Again, if you're suffering with fibroids, if you have that risk, if you had fibroid surgery. Last week I spoke about the fact that they return. So soaps have this chemical, shampoos, hairsprays has this chemical as well too. So these chemicals are found in a lot of plastics and cosmetics that we consume. And again, they're called EDCs, right? And they mimic our body's hormones and trigger all these signals that normally wouldn't be there. There's a lot of studies out there. There were 145,000 cases of endometriosis that were reviewed, and 56,700 cases, 56,700 cases of uterine fibroids in Europe that is linked to this issue as well too. And in general, with the chemicals that we're exposed to, right? Even coolant fluids, carbonless copy paper, these are all on this list if you go online and you look up these EDCs. So when you're choosing your products, Megan is saying, all this is making me want to lock up in a shed because I don't want these back. I hear you, but I think it's a good thing. I believe you did have fibroid surgery recently, Megan. So I think this is a great moment for you to just sort of keep thinking, forward thinking, keep pushing in terms of what you're exposing your body to. For instance, instead of a regular water bottle, right, you now want to make sure you're looking at what we call BPA-free products without plastics. There's a little label that they have on there. That's what the EPA is recommended. The BPAs, they also have health effects on the brain, on the prostate. They found that they're seeing it in fetuses and in children right after birth. It affects childhood behaviors. So you definitely want to sort of, keep this more in the forefront of your mind as well too, right? This is only going to be helpful for you. So in terms of prevention and fibroid risk and fibroid diet, we're looking at lean meats. We're looking at reducing the red meats in your diet, trying to figure out the source and trying to stick to organic where possible, but increasing physical activity, reducing your body mass index, vitamin D. We didn't get much this whole week with the weather we've been having, but vitamin D supplements, a daily intake, and of course the list of foods that contain it as well too. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. I'm going to post up the foods that would help in terms of reducing fibroid risk. Now, Miss Marshall is asking, what type of bottle did you say we should get? So BPA, which stands for don't worry what it stands for, but B as in boy, P as in Paul, A as in apple. You want to see that the plastic product says BPA free, right? The study with the mice, for example, they derived what they call microplastics. That was broken down from heating plastics. So even when you microwave your foods, you want to microwave and microwave safe and stay away from microwaving in plastics, because that sort of gets very tiny particles, gets absorbed into the foods they found, and that's how they were able to feed these mice and then induce the growth of fibroids in the uterus as well too in the lab, right? Let's see here. So BPA free, right? Difficult journey, but health is wealth. I love that, Megan. Thank you. So Shigo Chrissy, have an appointment tomorrow. Oh, we'll be there. We'll be there. We had an impromptu day off, but not me. But with the weather, we did have to observe some of the possible risks with the weather. But we'll be there tomorrow with bells on. Avi is saying, geez, we have to be bald head naked. Farmers growing our own food from scratch on a next planet because Mother Earth ain't happy with us. Aww. Hilarious. I love it. So good luck, Chris. You're in great hands. Thank you, Nicole. So I'm going to post what I have. This is a recap in a way, guys, that I talked about this stuff last year, but I don't mind talking about it. I'm going to probably talk about fibroids maybe 4 or 5 times more, PCOS just as much. But knowing the information is, I think, so key. So when we're looking at that bare choice, let's figure out something alternative to bear if you have fibroids, or if you're trying to reduce your fibroid risk, right? Glass bottles are safe, absolutely. And also let's think about our environment, right? My little guy here swimming with all this plastic. The glass bottles can be recycled, glass containers, using the microwave and so forth with glass would be a nice little simple change as well too. Okay, so thank you, Megan, and you're most welcome, Maxine, and everyone. Please stay safe. And I'm going to post my little list that I've been drawing from here as well too, right? So feel free to share this with your friends, your co-workers. 80% of women with any African ethnicity, and I didn't say that white or Latino women do not get fibroids. Think about all the environmental factors. We are possibly going to start moving away from, black women get it, because again, there are other factors that impact fibroids as well too. So thanks everyone for your time. I truly appreciate it, and have a great night. Thank you. You're most welcome, Miss Marshall. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.